Good evening, everybody. It's 9:30 on the East Coast, 6:30 on the West Coast on a Monday evening. It must mean it's time for your weekly Calamity Jane live stream. James, how are you doing on this soon-to-be frigid winter evening, at least here in Georgia?
I'm doing great on my side. It's cold here for LA, but again, I think we've had this conversation randomly throughout seasons
Oh, yeah,
where
yeah.
cold for us is not really cold compared to other places in the country. So for me, I can only say everything's great. Happy MLK Day? How
Yeah,
are you doing
yeah.
on your side?
I celebrated in the best way possible. I slept all day. I just
Yeah,
was
that's right.
lazy.
Yeah.
I turned on Metroid Prime remastered for a little bit. I just got a new giant TV,
Oh,
upgraded
that's
from
right.
a
Yes. Yes.
43 incher to a 55 incher. I had the day off. My roommate was at work, so I turned the volume up really loud on my nice 5.1
Nice.
stereo and just inhabited the body of Samus Aran on Talon 4 for a couple of hours.
That is so cool.
It
I'm very
was
envious of you.
it was very nice. I just going back and playing it again. It's such a like it's so good. It's such a great remaster.
Hmm.
The visually, it's one of the best looking games on the Switch, and it's just an absolute classic of Nintendo games. I mean, Metroid Prime is just among the best, right? And
Hmm.
just
Yep.
pure and simple.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I was playing that for a little bit and still chipping away at Persona 5. I'm about 30 hours in. I'm
Hmm.
getting the sense that this is like a 100-hour long game. You know,
Yeah.
it's a long one. I'm still enjoying it though. It's the thing I love about it. And you and I have spoken at length about gameplay loop, and and keeping the gameplay loop being self-perpetuating, right? We've spoken specifically about this with Monster Hunter, but Persona 5 also has an extremely addictive gameplay loop. But we should talk about what we're going to be working on, or you will be working on animation-wise, and then we can get into game design nerddom if you want to.
Sure, of course, I want to. So, no question about that. But yeah, let me share my screen. Let's just talk about work stuff for a second. All right, where we last left off,
Mm-hmm.
I was sketching out Warhog. We've got some new poses, and now I'm down to here where Warhog finally keels over, and we pan out to Leon being responsible for doing that final shot
Mm-hmm.
into the Warhog's skull. Somehow, that's a one weak point
That's just one,
of
the
the
temple.
warhog. The
Just
one,
the
yes, the temple.
just
Yes,
the left temple though.
yeah. So that's what I'll be working on today. But yeah, I do want to talk about. Actually, I want to talk about Metroid Prime that you just brought up.
Okay.
I'm curious about. So now that you have your, 'cause again, I live vicariously through you and your sound setup,
Sure.
and this is why I sent you God of War, for example,
Yeah.
because at least one of my friends can really listen to cool stuff about it. So Metroid Prime, how was that sound design wise? How was that game?
Uh,
I'm
you
really, I was really
know,
curious about it.
a little thin.
What?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's interesting. I mean, it's not as good as God of War. There's no question about it.
Wow. I'm
Now that I
surprised to
live
hear that.
well, now that I live in a single family house, right? I'm able to
Hmm.
turn up my woofer back to the levels that I like it, so things rumble a lot more without worrying about offending my neighbors and whatnot. And I've got, I don't have full size speakers, but I have really high quality Yamaha satellites, which you get
Hmm.
really great sound out of. I mean, Yamaha, I think, will be the only brand I ever buy audio equipment from, at least home theater audio equipment from. I have a technology black thumb, and I've never had anything wrong with any Yamaha product I've ever purchased. So
Okay.
I'm a diehard Yamaha booster. Anyway, so I'm finally able to turn everything up, and like I said, was able to turn everything up really loud, and I realized that, yeah, the sounds are just kind of thin in Metroid Prime.
Oh,
It's the weakest
I was
part.
hoping. Yeah, I was hoping when you said like you turned it really loud. I was like, oh, cool. That means you really had a chance to
Yeah, yeah.
hear some cool stuff. And oh man, that's really disappointing to hear though. Um,
There are some good beats. There are some good cues, but Samus's everything is just very thin and staccato. It doesn't have a lot of low end. And some of it I
mhm,
understand, but you could still give it some oomph,
mhm,
Her basic blaster shot, right?
mhm.
her basic beam shot is like pew 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 pew. It's just like, it's literally just a sci-fi pew, right?
Okay.
And they didn't really spend a lot of time giving it any sort of rumble or oomph whatsoever, and so it feels very very weak as a result, right?
Hmm.
But then there are some stuff that's great. Some of the monster roars are really good, right? Um,
Okay.
the ambience, just the sort of the surround sound ambience is really good. So when you're walking around and you're walking in the original home base area where her ship is, you
Hmm.
really can hear the rain all around you, and you can hear the water fall off in the distance, and so a lot of the ambient sound effects are really good. But honestly, like Samus's jump is very very quiet, because I guess it's just like it's an air boost or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Her footsteps are very metallic, right? And like tink 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 tink.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
it's a part of it just has to do with the design aesthetic of the world, that her sound effects by and large are um, pretty thin. But yeah, I was expecting a lot more rumble than I got out of the game.
Huh.
Yeah,
What about so when you're in like a space and there's enemies all
yeah.
around you, do you feel like the stereo
Oh
feeling of
yeah,
them behind you and stuff?
yeah. But I mean, that's kind of the fun thing about and this I've said this before. I feel like the one thing that TV and movies and music will never beat video games is just the depth of sound,
Okay.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because the user controls their position in the world and things can be happening behind them, and that's okay, right? You're just the way that video games surround you with sound is always going to be better than movies or what have you. And
Hmm.
yeah, so even though the sound, it's not as deep or as rich as I would hope. Yeah, when you're in the thick of things, surrounded by enemies, you can hear them all over the place. Like you really do
Yeah.
feel like you're in the midst of it.
Okay. That's cool. At least they put some work into that. I
Mm-hmm.
almost wonder, like, back when it was first created, like for the GameCube, if they actually had that in mind, or if that's something that's newer that they put for the remaster, having that kind of spatial design, sound quality, that's been, was it added on or not? Because it's been years since I played the game. I mean, the last time I played Prime was on the GameCube, and
Mm-hmm.
I had just TV speakers for that. So I know for a fact that, I mean, I know that the sounds are great then, but again, that was for the GameCube. So, but you actually, I know you're more of the audiophile type guy, so you actually may have been able to kind of compare maybe from your backlog back then when you played it to now, like if the sound has improved in that
Yeah,
fashion, they actually
yeah,
remastered it, for that.
yeah. There's no question that it's better. I mean, they're obviously using the same, basically the same sound effects from the original game. Um, but no, I guarantee you that the surround sound is much better now, because when it came out originally on the GameCube and when they re-released it on the Wii as
Mm-hmm.
part of the Metroid Prime trilogy, um, neither one of those platforms supported true surround sound, because they
Okay.
only did neither one of them supported HDMI. At best, they supported component out, which is a video thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But both platforms only supported a left and right channel RCA out, and you can simulate surround sounds to a certain point. Dolby like did some kind of surround sound simulation technology, but it's not true surround sound, right? So with the advent of HDMI, and you had much higher bandwidth for audio, and you could do actual true surround sound implementation. Yeah, I guarantee you that just the soundscape is better on the remake than it is on the original for sure.
Okay. Well then, so keep it in mind with this whole sound stuff. So again, so Persona 5 Royal
Mm-hmm.
is a joy to play. I love the music track for it.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think there's so much thought that's been put into the music, how it actually kind of changes over time as you play and you get further into the game. Like, they actually add a singer to the background music at a certain
Mm-hmm.
point, because
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of hear the lyrics to certain songs. Oh, that's really cool. And I mean, and I think I take it for granted when I'm playing the game, but I think the sound effects are pretty solid in that game too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more of a, I feel like it's more musical compared to sound effecty. Like the strength of that game is about the music versus the sound effects. Sound effects are kind of more they do the job. They're functional. They're great. But yeah, I'm curious what you thought about that. Because if you had it cranked up to play Metroid, you probably had it cranked up for Persona as well, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, Persona is a little bit different because it's so far. You're so far away from Joker the whole time, even when you're in the palaces.
Yeah.
That all of the sound balance is slightly different. But yeah, you're also right because it's an RPG. There's not a lot of in real time action pieces at all. All the action occurs in the turn based set piece battles, right? So it is like the music is great. I mean, the Persona music, Persona 5 is got one of the best soundtracks ever. Like eminently listenable music. And but I will say that the world it feels very live. I mean, we talked about the way they handle crowds.
Yeah.
And what an elegant solution it was for how they manage the crowds. But they did a lot of work on. And it wouldn't surprise me if they just went to Shibuya Crossing and Shibuya Station and just set up, an omnidirectional microphone and just sampled the environment because, it really does sound like all of the places that you're in.
Yep.
And so one of the real successes of that game is how alive it feels. And a huge part of that is the quality of just sort of the ambient noise that exists in the world, right?
Yeah.
The rest of the sound effects, the battle sounds and that kind of stuff, are just sort of your general video game sound effects. I mean, they're not great, they're not bad. They sound good. They don't sound crackly or distorted or anything like that. But there's no real like particularly memorable sound effects, right? That, at least for me, maybe someone who's been playing the Shin Megami Tensei or Persona games for eons, like, oh my god, that's this sound effect that's been in the original one, which is probably is almost certain, but I don't have the context for it, so.
Yeah.
But no, the Persona really, Persona 5 for me has really been, it really lives on the how easy it is to get lost in the world, right? Because the whole game is structured on days and there's only so many things in the day that you can do. You find yourself like just losing time because it's like, what should I do today? And you have to make these choices about, do I visit this one confidant, or do I go into mementos, or do I study and gain knowledge? And you can only do 2 or 3 things in a given day unless there's some sort of story reason extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
And as a result, I've gone in-game weeks of time without saving. Just because I get lost in the just one more decision. Just one more decision. Just one more decision. And then before you know it, you've played for like 3 hours and you're like, what the hell just happened? And it's such a rewarding game loop because you always get to look forward to some new decision to make in the next gameplay day, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is. Yeah, I agree with you on this. I mean, for the gameplay loop, it is near perfect because you can play it
One second, James. 1 second.
Yeah. Yeah. I will now pause this one and this thought for incredible, deep suspense and everything, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like what I'm just adding on to what you were saying. Like the game loop is near perfect because you can either play it in bite-sized increments for just a day or two and then put it away, or you can play it, like you said, you can get lost in a week and all of a sudden you spent an hour or two playing the game. It's it's one of the coolest game loops that I played in the game as well, where I don't feel guilty stopping here because I know at the end of the day, and the days themselves aren't that long for the most part, unless you go into a dungeon or whatever they're called, the mind palaces, where you're going to spend a little more time. But if you're outside of that, days can go by really quick, and then you feel like you got a little bit done in the game. You can move on and live your real life day, which is much
Yeah.
longer. And yeah, yeah, that
It
part.
also it also is kind of a magic trick how organic it feels, even though the gameplay progress is always scripted, right?
Hmm.
And they will always make it so that on this day this event occurs, um,
Hmm.
but it's so organic. It almost I forget that there's no way for me to not progress the story, right? It,
Yeah,
it feels like, oh, this is supposed to happen now. It doesn't feel scripted at all. It just, I don't know. They did such a great job of layering in the pre-scripted, pre-designed elements into the very organic nature about how you can go about your day, right?
yeah, it doesn't feel forced
It
as
does
a
not feel
result.
forced at all. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So yeah, it's just I know we talked about it at length the last week, so I don't want to get too deep down into the Persona 5 rabbit hole again. But yeah, it's been great. Really still enjoying it. I
Yeah.
um, moving on from that with no transition. I watched The Disaster Artist again for the first time in a long time.
So, oh, this is a okay. This movie, I really, I enjoyed the original. So, did you watch? I mean, did you watch the remake with what's the actor's name
Yeah,
from
James and Dave Franco.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
So,
the
did you
movie.
watch?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
That's
did
The
you watch?
Disaster Artist.
Oh, okay. So, the original is what? The Dinner? What is
The
it called?
Room. The
The
Room.
Room. That's what it is. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I've been wanting
Um,
to force. I've been wanting to force family to watch The Room for a long time, just so we could watch The Disaster Artist
yeah.
afterward.
Yeah. Yeah. So they have some
Yeah.
context. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I have The Room on Blu-ray. I've been trying to get a viewing party together, where
Yeah.
just a bunch of friends. We all get drunk or what have you, and just sit
Yeah.
and watch the
Sure.
movie and make fun of it. I
Hmm.
couldn't get like a whole group of people together, but we got like three friends and we watched it, and one of them had never seen it beginning to end, and it was great, and I loved it, and it got me just in a walking down memory lane again. We've talked about The Disaster Artist, which is the book that Greg Sestero co-wrote that talked about the process of making The Room, and
Yeah.
I just put a bug in my ear, and so I bought the Blu-ray and the book for super cheap. I mean, it was like $20 for both,
Hmm.
and then I had some friends over last night, and we watched The Disaster Artist, which it is remarkable what a good impersonation of um, Tommy
Franco,
Wiseau that James
yeah.
Franco does. It's just
Yeah.
it is
He
uncanny.
studied him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's really, yeah. Um. So wait. So when you watched this with your friends, they did see The Room, then, right? So
yeah.
they had some.
Everybody had
Okay.
seen The Room, so they had the full context of what was going on.
So so what was their reaction after watching The Disaster Artist? Like, what? How do they feel about it watching it?
I mean, they loved it. The thing that I like about The Disaster Artist is it's a good movie, irrespective of the fact that it's kind of a biopic, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, um, but when you've seen The Room, when you've seen the original, it adds a whole other layer because you start anticipating these moments that you
Yeah.
know are coming, right?
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
thing that blew my mind, and I saw The Disaster Artist originally back when it came out in theaters and hadn't really seen it since then. I
Uh-huh.
can't believe how many people are in this movie. I mean, aside from James and Dave Franco, there's Seth Rogen and Paul
Yeah.
Scheer and
Yeah.
Hannibal Buress and Jason Mantzoukas and Josh Hutcherson, and Zac Efron has a small cameo that you would not even recognize. Um, Nathan Fielder from the
What?
Nathan For You
Wow.
and The Curse, he's in it. I
Wow, I
mean,
didn't know that. That's
yeah,
crazy. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
mm-hmm. Just an absolutely stacked cast. Um, but and yeah, I think Sharon Stone has a really small cameo, and who else? Anyway, I could go on and on. I mean, there's a ton of actors in it, and it's pretty clear that they wanted to be a part of the project just because, The Room is sort of it's a legend at this point.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so they all thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, like I remember when The Room came out, became the cult kind of movie that you went to go see, kind of similar to Rocky Horror Picture Show. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
get to that level, but it felt like that kind of status, like it was growing to that. And I remember, what's the actor, the writer actor guy, Tommy Wiseau?
Tommy Wiseau, yeah.
Wiseau. Like I remember, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought he was really taken aback and offended that people didn't take his movie seriously, but then he learned to embrace it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
that he sort of like he went from like in WWE terms, he was heel, then he turned into face in a way, and he kind of went,
Right.
oh, you know what? Yeah, it is really funny, and
Yeah.
we did, like it was kind of interesting to watch the evolution of just the original cast and how it has slowly evolved into when the Franco's actually made it into another a biopic type of movie.
I mean, it's remarkable. I think he made bank on it, and I suspect that Greg Sestero made just even if he didn't get a lot of royalties from the movie directly, he stayed friends with Tommy Wiseau, and he would constantly go to all the movie showings that they did, and he made a lot of money. He's had to have made a fair amount of money just kind of in the afterlife that the movie had, and good for him, because my understanding is he spent most of the rest of his career just doing off-Broadway stuff, just enjoying being an actor, right? And he doesn't really have to worry about the pressures of auditioning in the same Hollywood kind of space.
Yeah, yeah.
And but yeah, Tommy Wiseau, when it first came out, I mean, he thought he was making a masterpiece, right?
Yes, of course. That's what makes those kind of B movies. It's kind of sad because you, as the human condition, you want to celebrate creating art, but then there's also this weird evil thing that I think we all have inside us. Maybe I'm wrong, but where you kind of laugh because of the amount of effort and seriousness that goes into making such a turd in a way too.
There's a bit of a Schadenfreude to it. But the interesting thing though is the only, in my opinion, the only good bad movies are the ones that are made in full earnestness.
Yep. Yeah. So for example, this is the issue I have where at some point around maybe the mid 2000s, people tried to start making movies on purpose.
Right.
Then you lose this whole spirit. Like for example, the Sharknadoes, I think, are a great example. I think Ian Zerling, I think, is the main actor that kind of headlines them. I enjoy watching him do those movies. They're still fun, but you always know that every one of those scenes are purposely written to be that way. There's no soul in it as much.
Right.
As them just trying to make a B movie versus accidentally making a B movie is the huge difference.
Yeah. Parodying bad movies is an odd choice, right? Because The Room and all of Ed Wood's films, they weren't parodies. They were earnestly
endeavors.
trying to do something.
Yeah.
But and all of the Asylum movies too, like Titanic 2 and Transmorphers and all of the cheap knockoff movies that are clearly inspired by popular mainstream stuff to try to make a buck really quickly. None of those are, I find, particularly enjoyable, just because there's no sincerity between it. These aren't, and so it's an interesting thing, because it's not like I really enjoy watching Tommy Wiseau suffer, but there is something very funny about the idea that all of this love and passion was put into something that everybody knew was going to be just awful from the beginning, This is one of those
Yeah.
weird things.
I mean, I'm still giggling right now, just thinking about scenes and like the football scene, for example, just how much effort and
Mm-hmm.
thought
Mm-hmm.
that went into it, trying to, it's just so silly and absurd, but it's great. It's yeah, it brings back good memories. It makes me want to. The only thing now is that it makes me want to, like, I can't watch The Disaster Artist without watching The Room first. Like, I
Right.
have to watch. It's
Right.
been so long anyway. So
Yeah.
you kind of settle into a Lord of the Rings kind of epic sit down of watching really terrible B movie stuff. And you need to kind of have a you just need to have the stamina to do that. I don't know if I have the stamina right now to do that. But I want to. But the mind's willing, but the body can't. I don't know if I can handle. I don't know if I can handle that unless I'm forcing somebody else to suffer. Like
That's
almost
true.
like
Yeah.
I almost want to take it. I want to take the movies and like show it to somebody that doesn't have any suspicion whatsoever what the movies are. Like almost go in vanilla and then watch their reaction. Then I would get a lot more out of it. And then like after finishing the room, go into the by the way, now here's a sequel, or the one that actually is inspired for this movie, is inspired from this movie, and go from there. And then just that's actually kind of fun. Maybe even have a couple of shots, or something on the side, and enjoy a couple of scenes here and there. I don't know. I think that's the way to go. But
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I love introducing new people to the room, and you're right. The least amount of information you can give him, the better, right? I mean,
yes,
you know, um, the let's see. Hopefully this has been going. I moved focus away, and it seemed like, well, hopefully this is fine. Looks like it's fine. Sorry, I'm just checking, making sure that we didn't have a technical problem. Okay, we didn't have a technical problem. I apologize.
good.
People are going to ask, like, why do you want me to watch this movie so bad? And you have to give them a little bit of context. It's like, okay, this is a very unique film by a very unique filmmaker, but, like, just don't give them any information beyond that. It's
Yeah,
hard pressed to find people who aren't at least familiar with the notion of The Room being one of the worst movies ever made, right?
yeah,
And so
yeah.
you can't escape that to a certain extent. But you will still find people who haven't seen it, or they've only seen one or two scenes, right?
And
And
they don't know where that came
they
from or
don't.
anything. And then yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um, that's the down in the rough audience that you want to find. People that have just maybe an inkling or don't know anything about the movie and just enjoy it again through their eyes and
Oh
through their
yeah,
lens, and
absolutely.
watch them question stuff and everything.
I know.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw The Room and I just was dying of hysterical laughter. I mean, just absolutely. But it's also admirable too, because the guy, he
Yeah,
made a movie, a feature
he
length
did.
full movie, wrote the script, produced it,
Yeah,
co-directed it, acted in it. I mean, it is more than 90% of the people in this world are going to do, right? And
yeah.
obviously I don't know where he gets his money. He has a bottomless pit of money. I think the rough estimates is that tiny little movie cost something like $6 million to make.
Wow, seriously?
Yeah.
Wow, where did the money go
Independently,
to?
privately financed. Well, I mean, some of it went to just renting out the sound stage space.
Okay, yeah, makes
The
sense.
fact that he
Yeah,
bought a film camera and bought a high def digital camera to film the movie, which nobody does.
he was that he had that much belief in the product
Mm-hmm.
in the project. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so he independently financed it at rumors say $6 million, which is unbelievable.
Wow.
Um, and that, I mean, and it's not just the movie though, too. It is the whole character of Tommy Wiseau, right? The fact that he has this strange accent, these strange mannerisms, but insists that he is a natural-born citizen of this country, and not only that he grew up in New Orleans, and that his accent is a Cajun accent, right?
Oh my gosh, I forgot about all that. I need to watch it.
Yeah, and he just the man is just a bottomless pit of mystery and esoteric idiosyncrasies, and he is as fascinating as the movie that he created, right? And I think
Yes,
if
he is.
Tommy Wiseau weren't as interesting a figure as he is, I don't know that the room would work in the same way.
Yeah, he is an interesting character. There's no doubt about it. That makes it more compelling watching him on the screen, asking these questions like, where is he from?
Yeah, yeah,
Watching him tackle, well, literally talk about football at that one point. I remember that
oh my
scene really
god,
sticking out to me.
yeah, yeah,
The All-American game football and the way he approached it, it was like a weird slow motion kind of, not train wreck. It wasn't like awful, but it was like watching a fender bender in slow motion kind of thing happening a lot of times during viewing that movie. It's crazy.
yeah,
Six
yeah.
billion, $6 billion, that in the early 2000s, and I mean I'm just going back to just recent, like Godzilla minus one was 15 million, I think, was for the budget. It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing that
Right, right.
it's just for, I mean, if you're spending funny money, monopoly money, that's what kind of range you can get under $20 million.
Yeah, yeah,
It's an
exactly.
incredible monster.
A movie like that, at the final quality of the room should have cost $50,000 at most.
Yes,
And that's
yes,
like just
yeah.
if it's wildly over budget. And it costs $6 million to make.
Wow.
Just absolutely fascinating. But here's, Tommy Wiseau had the last laugh, because I am certain that money has
Oh, he made
more
it.
than, more than paid for itself at this
And
point.
again, more power to him. It's awesome.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm actually, and as a viewer, I'm happy to have helped contribute to
Oh
that in
yeah.
some strange way.
Oh yeah,
Like,
absolutely,
he
absolutely.
still tried to make a piece of art, and it just
Mhm.
didn't work out that great. But it's okay. He tried.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and it kind of makes me like, I almost kind of want to go down a rabbit hole of, okay, like where would you put The Room as your all-time B movie, terrible movie list? Where do you put it?
It's up there. I mean, I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Plan 9 from Outer Space, because frankly
Uh-huh.
that movie is what introduced me to the whole concept of good bad movies, right?
Oh, okay, all right, yeah,
So
that
I
makes sense.
mean, it just from a pure nostalgia standpoint. I remember watching Ed Wood, Tim Burton's biopic about Ed Wood,
Hmm.
and thinking it was good, but wanting to have more context for what was going on,
Yeah,
and watching the original Plan 9 from Outer Space, and just having my mind blown that the
yeah,
movie, ended up being what it was. And from there, I had seen one or two episodes of Mystery Science 3000 up to that point, but
hmm hmm
wasn't really super exposed to the whole concept of good bad cinema until
hmm
Plan 9 from Outer Space. But that being said, The Room is right up there. I mean, it's right at the top of the list. Um, and all of the sci-fi intentional parody stuff. I mean, it's not even close. But I think, honestly, MST3K has done such a marvelous job of
hmm hmm
preserving a lot of these great bad movies. I love some of the classics of MST3K are things like Space Mutiny and Time Chasers and Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, and what is it, Night of the Iguana or something like that.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
The Touch of Satan. Obviously, Manos, The Hands of Fate is an absolute classic. Um, there's so many amazing movies by people who just somehow got a movie camera and had a dream, and they did it, against
Yeah,
every piece of sense and reason and logic and justification in the world. They made a movie, and that, even if it's really bad, I mean, that is a huge accomplishment. You know.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Again, more power to them for even doing it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
again, the endeavor needs to be applauded for sure. Um, yeah. For me, The Room is up there. It's probably top five, but it's not number one.
Okay.
And I don't remember, like, I'm sure, like, when you would come and visit us in the animation department in Warner Brothers, we would make, I'm sure we made you sit down and watch some really terrible movies. I could have swore we've done that.
Oh, I'm certain.
You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, it's interchangeable, but the two worst B movies that are terrific are Kill or Be Killed with James Ryan, who was also in the movie Space Mutiny as the villain in Space Mutiny.
Okay.
It's a movie that takes place in the middle of the desert, run by a Nazi. It's post World War II. A Nazi that's escaped, a Nazi captain that's escaped and wanted to do his own karate Olympiad with his own tainted version of his team versus a Japanese team.
Okay.
And he recruits the hero James Ryan, who was known as Steve Chase in the movie, and hilarity ensues pretty much in this middle of this castle in the middle of the desert, and a lot of karate happens. What's really funny is the quality of the karate in that movie is actually really good, especially for the time frame it was made. I believe it's early 70s or mid 70s. It's the action sequences are terrific, but the story is, oh my god, it's god awful. But and it makes you just laugh out loud watching it. So there's that one. So I could have sworn we made you watch that one because we were obsessed with it in the animation department for a long time.
Yeah, I'm looking up right now because I'm trying to remember. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and so there's that one. But then the other one was we had a storyboard artist come in and do some storyboards for us for one of our Looney Tunes stuff. And his name was Colin Blaine, but he was really a character. And Steve, who was on our stream a couple years back, you know, he's my old boss. He's like, we need to look up this guy. Like, what else has he done? Like, he made a big scene. Like, I won't get into everything, but it was very interesting. It's a very unique kind of guy. Turns out he directed and wrote his own movie called Rotor, R-O-T-O-R.
Rotor. Okay.
That movie, and I cannot believe that we may not have forced you to watch that movie.
I don't remember it off the top of my head. No.
It's a ripoff of Terminator and RoboCop. This mustachioed guy, this guy with a stash, runs around and he's a haywire robot that's meant to serve and protect the populace, and it is awful, but it is so funny. Every single moment, like it's so like there's scenes that are just drawn out, and like you just go, why is this torture happening? Then you get rewarded with something absurd that happens later, so you just kind of keep watching. You know, it's one of those type of movies where like, why am I watching this? Oh, and then you just kind of you have a little mystery box that kind of pops up and go, oh my gosh, this is the best movie ever. Oh my god, I'm watching more of them driving and talking on the phone. When is gonna? Oh my gosh, that robot's hilarious. You know, like it's like that type of stuff. It's
how do you guys watch it?
This is all VHS back in the day. But okay. Now it should be streaming.
Rotor. I'm looking it up. Yeah, it's on Tubi. My god. Okay, I can stream this.
So I'm going to hand you the keys to. If you want some really bad movies to torture your friends with, go with those two.
I'm also curious. What's that?
And also, so Kill or Be Killed or Rotor, I think, no matter everything I've seen, those are the two top. Mm-hmm. Those ones always flip back and forth for me. Mm-hmm. The Room is up there, though. I love The Room. It's a great movie. But, you know, in the animation department, we were obsessed with that movie. So a lot of those movies you were talking about, we saw those, but then we found even more. Like, we're, with animators, when we're, like, kind of herd, you know, we have a herd mentality, we get obsessed with something, all of us go to the four winds, we find everything, and then we portrait all of us together in that bullpen, and we suffer through a lot of awful movies. But yeah, if you want to make your friends suffer, you're not going to go wrong with those two.
Rotor riff tracks, the old, you know, half the MST3K guys, they've done a riff tracks on it.
Okay, good. Yeah. Good. I'm glad I made it on their list. Yeah, it's a gem.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's streaming on Tubi, so I can definitely check that out.
I can't believe.
And this guy, the guy who directed this, he worked with you?
Yeah, he worked with
Wow.
us. He did some storyboards, but I I don't want to disparage the guy too much, but he was just, he was, he
And
was unique, he
he
was
was an
different,
interesting
and
character. Yeah.
yeah, he was an interesting character, and that's what caused us to go, where is this guy from? Where did he come from? Like, why
Yeah.
is he the way he is? Yeah, we're fascinated with him, and and it did not disappoint when we found out the rest of his history. Besides doing animation, storyboard, stuff like that, the guy actually wrote his own movie called ROTOR, Rotor.
That's
Um,
amazing.
it is you're not going to go wrong with either of those, Eric. I'm telling you right now, both of them are gems. I kind of wish we lived in the same state so I could,
Yeah, we
so
could
we
do like
could
a
like
movie
plan a
night.
weekend, yeah,
Yeah.
movie night, and force you and some friends to suffer a little bit. It's that good. You will thank me later. Yeah, it's up there with the room.
Yeah, there
I
it is.
think.
I see it. It's on. Wow, and it's 90 minutes. It's like a real movie.
Hmm.
That's always
Oh,
this.
it definitely is. Definitely a beginning, middle, and an end.
The movie poster is phenomenal. Um,
Compare that with what is it? Road Warrior, I think.
yeah,
It's just a rip off. Like if you watch it, like all they did is they flipped the Road Warrior
yeah,
layout for the movie poster, and they ripped it off. It's beautiful.
yeah.
It's so embarrassingly beautiful.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
steal the screen and share it for anybody
yeah,
who's
yeah. Let's
watching
do
it.
it.
Um,
Yeah. So do I stop share here on my side?
I'll just overwrite it.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so that is the movie poster for Rotor. Isn't that amazing? What a flaming motorcycle at the feet of this weird RoboCop wielding a Desert Eagle with
Yeah.
police emblazoned on the top of his motorcycle helmet. It looks more like a
Yeah.
fighter pilot helmet, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's
Well,
brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
wait till you see a close up of the helmet and how they detailed it. I'm not gonna say anything more, but
Okay.
you will get a chance to see the detailed helmet, the technology they used to make sure you knew that it was Rotor. It's amazing. But if you can, do me a favor and see if you can find the movie poster for Road Warrior. I think it was Road Warrior Mad Max. But
Okay, yeah, so let's
it's a
see here.
pure, blatant ripoff of that movie poster.
All right,
Um,
so the original Road Warrior, the Australian one, yeah, there it
I
is. I
think
got it.
so.
Yep.
Um,
So I'm looking
and it's
at
like
it. It was the original Mad Max. It wasn't Road Warrior.
okay. Okay, well,
There
yeah,
we
maybe
go.
it meant, yeah,
Yeah. So here is.
and
I'm showing everybody on the stream. Here is the original Road Warrior movie poster, and then here is the Rotor movie poster. And James is correct. It is exactly the same poster. It's just that Rotor
yep,
is facing
Mad Max.
stage right, and Mad Max is facing stage left, and that's it. Otherwise, it's almost identical.
Yeah. So you're admiring all this Desert Eagle and all this stuff, but really, Mad Max, like, oh my god! And then they have him standing on top of debris and stuff, like feeling it's Terminator-ish. Like,
Hmm.
there's so many things going on in this movie. I'm telling you, and RoboCop obviously came later, but it is pretty much. Well, actually, I want to know, when is Rotor actually made? Was it-
87.
Oh, so let's see. RoboCop came in out on 84, 86. When did that come out?
No, that was 86, I think,
Yeah. So
or 88
there's a lot of
maybe.
inspiration.
RoboCop release 87. It was 87, so it's the same
Okay.
year. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's amazing how much. Now, I don't know whether RoboCop was inspired from Rotor or not because of the parallel potentially of the productions. Who knows?
I don't know. I
But
don't know.
oh, it's a beautiful movie, Eric.
Okay, I'll definitely have to check it out.
Yeah, I am very curious now. When you do get a chance to watch it, you can. I just want to hear the reaction
Okay.
after the fact, the aftermath. Um, yeah, for sure.
All right.
Um,
I love it.
yeah, with all that being said, I think we're in a pretty good spot.
Okay.
To call it good for now. I will implement this into the main thing, but we now have the warhog passing out.
Hmm.
And we actually have this shot here, and we actually did the art for Leon here.
Hmm.
And I'll implement that into our next week's stream
Okay.
and move on. But
Excellent.
yeah, we've
Excellent.
got some stuff here tonight
Well,
as we're talking about bad movies.
the warhog in Act One has finally met its end. It was a long
Hmm.
time coming.
Yeah, yes. Kind of sad to put it down like that in a sense, but that's the beauty of animation is that who knows when it'll reappear.
Yeah, who knows? Indeed. Who knows? Indeed. All right. Well, we'll call it there. If you head on over to calamityjane.rocks, it'll take you to our Patreon site and consider subscribing and helping us make this cartoon a reality. Also, you can find us on Facebook and YouTube, which is conceivably how you're watching this right now. Also, you can also head to at Calamity Jane Salamander on Instagram to take a look. We do weekly posts on some concept art and talking about a little bit of the behind the scenes on it, as well as some other stuff as we feel like posting. Otherwise, we will be back next week at the same Jane time, same Jane channel. And until then, stay safe out there, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, good night.
Just a side note.
Oh,
If anybody knows any terrible movies
oh yeah,
that
please.
Eric and I should watch, please let us know because
Yeah.
we always have our ear to the ground for that stuff.
Yeah,
But
always.
yeah, other than
Yeah.
that,
All right.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Have a good night, everybody, and we'll see you on the flip side.